Thank you so much. Well, we're going to move now to a very large context, a very diverse context, certainly in relationship to Singapore. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Farah, who can tell us a little bit about the situation of transversal competencies in Malaysia. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and respected panelists and everyone, all the audience. Thank you so much for inviting me. Just to share some thoughts about the Malaysian policy. I'd like to start with giving an overview of what the educational policy is in Malaysia. So I think you may have heard about our, quite famous, the Malaysian Educational Blueprint from 2013 to 2025. It's a very ambitious national education blueprint, and all activities, all assessments, and whatever educational, activities or policies must be based on the national blueprint. Okay, so this national blueprint has been analyzed and received a lot of input from up to 55,000 individuals, those from the administrators, teachers, and many organizations, including parents. So I think that starting from that blueprint, all of our, the way we organize our schools are based on this blueprint. And this blueprint is actually based on our national educational policy in 1988, which stressed the importance of producing well-balanced individuals in physical, intellectual, and spiritual abilities. So I'm so much very interested with the discussion earlier by Professor Cheng and the panelists, where they said about the values education, and I'm also working on that. Anyway, coming back to the overview. So in this national blueprint that Malaysia have, there are 11 pillars of transformation that all school agencies have to follow, and they are very good and very, as I mentioned earlier, ambitious. And one of it is cultivating values-driven Malaysians. And what that means is that Malaysia have identified several values that the students or the children in Malaysia should have. Okay, so this has been enacted, or I can say planned rather than enacted, using what we call 10 cross-curricular components that focuses on several areas. For example, the communication, spirituality, humanity, strengths, and so on. So from Malaysia point of view, we have a blueprint, and now it's just a matter of following the blueprint and trying to adjust a little bit. So if I can mention also here is that the national educational policy is much more on something from the top down, okay, and not something so much from the bottom-up perspective, even though they have received a lot of input. I think that it is quite normal when we give some input to the authorities and they make it generic enough so that everybody can follow it. But one of the barriers from my own observations is that there is no particular framework or model on how to do it in the classroom. But I think we are trying our best as teachers to practice it and adjust to our own situation in the specific school. I think, get back to you, Aaron.
Thank you so much to tell us a little bit about the development of the Malaysian National Blueprint and how novel and visionary it is, despite the many implementation issues. So I'd like to move to our Vietnamese expert. Nguyen, the floor is yours. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about how transversal competencies are being integrated into the Vietnamese curriculum. or in terms of policies? Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm happy to be here to share with you about the Vietnamese policy about transversal skills education. Yeah, uh, uh, overall, the policy is quite perfect in Vietnam. From the education law, we care about the competency, attitude, and citizen awareness for students in schools, in both primary school and secondary school. Yeah, and this follow from the resolution when the government want to move to shift from the provide knowledge to students to develop the competencies and attitude for students. Yeah, and following that, in the new curriculum, general curriculum in 2018, um, the curriculum provide the general competencies, includes autonomy and self-studies, communication and collaboration, problem solving, and creativity. Includes with us, we care about some values, such as responsibilities, concerned citizens, about the other, about the country, about the environmental education, and hardworking and kindness and honesty. So here, when I think about the rethinking what is the chambers, so skills reminder by the Professor Cheng, I think that the transversal skills is not only competencies, skills is more than about the values. So this is the perspective from the curriculum in Vietnam. Yeah. And curriculum create the opportunities to develop the transversal skills, and is followed by the author of the textbook. Yeah. In the textbook, the author pay more attention to improve the transversal skills, like designing the learning activity to based on project learning, problem solving learning, cooperative, or the encouragement of student creativity. Yeah, and I am the author of the one textbook about nature and social for the primary school, and then when I combine the textbook, we also care about it. But the challenges of Vietnam, that is the policy from top to down. So we have some challenges when implementation the competence transversal skills in school. Yeah, when we now we conduct one project in the cooperation with the female Innotech, and when we share with the teacher, they almost lack of the understanding about transversal skills. Yeah, most of them do not understand what the transversal skills or the 21st century skills. They may know something like problem solving skills, yeah, collaborative skills, but they do not have the overall understanding about the conversal skills, transversal skills. That is the first challenges. And for the second challenge is that is they lack of the material about how to develop the transversal skills for students. So they do not know how. With a lot of students in a class, yeah, how they can conduct the activity for the student can participate in the activity learning. So that is the big challenge. The second challenge is that it how to assess transversal skills. Yeah. They always, how to say, in Vietnam, the second challenge is that is about the focus on knowledge and the test and the assessment. So how can we effort with or maybe they care about the score more than the improve the skills. So they care about the knowledge more than the skills. And when they assess the transversal skill, they almost do not know how. They lack of the tool to measure it. And that is the second big challenge is implementation transversal skills in school in Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One of the impressions that I have as I listen to colleagues speak about the different evolution of policy in the Southeast Asia region is the willingness of a lot of countries in the region to really rethink the goals and purposes of their education systems. And, you know, I think it is something to stop for just a moment and ask, you know, are we, Professor Chang kind of made this very clear that the 21st century is also very different from the 20th century. But I think within the education community, there seems to be a kind of a growing appetite to think much more deeply and in somewhat innovative ways. Having spent quite a few years at UNESCO headquarters as the director of the Education Monitoring Report, the reason that I'm here in Seoul, South Korea, is that UNESCO this last week has co-hosted, together with colleagues here in South Korea, something that's known as the 5th Forum on Transformative Education for Sustainable Development, Global Citizenship, Health and Well-being. And I remarked to one of the senior leaders in the education sector at UNESCO that when I left just a couple of years ago, I would not have imagined that UNESCO would organize an international conference in which the title was Transformative Education. And then I went a little bit further and I looked at, I'm sure, this report that many of you might have seen, which is called kind of a reimagining the social contracts, and especially thinking about the futures of education. And in that document, I think the word transforming or transformative or transformation probably occurs more than 120 or 130 times. And if you go back to some of the other documents, you know, even with the beginning of the SDGs and the Incheon Declaration in 2015, you know, this kind of word transformation was almost missing, or if it did occur, to a much lesser level. So the idea that you can have a conference to speak about a kind of a learning or educational process that is really meant to transform the educational and learning experiences of young and older learners from a much more lifelong perspective is really, you know, kind of illustrative of this period of time that we're living through. And what I hear at least is just a lot of energy and willingness among many of the leaders in the Southeast Asia region to think through these issues, you know, in very innovative ways. And one of the things I think that we've heard is how should we say, the process of developing a major educational reform, especially in the curriculum, has been a little bit more inclusive, in which many different stakeholders and different individuals have been invited to comment on the policies that are envisioned. But what we've also heard, and this will kind of bring us to the second round of questions, is that you know, there are major, although the vision may have moved forward, you know, more expansive, more comprehensive, more holistic, you know, thinking about transversal competencies, which means undermining the usual silos of knowledge within the disciplines, that despite a very innovative and holistic vision, one of the biggest issues is around implementation, the how. So the kind of the where you wish to get to is becoming much clearer. The much more difficult thing is the how. And it's clear that, you know, different colleagues have spoken to, you know, issues around teacher preparation, to issues around assessment, and many others. But I'd like them, if they could each take a turn, to speak specifically about the implementation challenges. And one of the ways that they can also discuss this is speaking to any kind of research that has been undertaken, even though in many cases, it's still quite early because of the process of the curriculum reforms, but the extent to which research has maybe highlighted certain kinds of implementation challenges and issues that are being confronted as they roll out this very expansive